Bruce Leybourne, concepts of stellar transformers, and
David Johnson from Argos Vu, supporting Bruce's efforts.
to increase the understanding of how the Earth actually works, and then use that information to develop forecasting scheme to enhance different types of forecasting. Take existing models and inject some information into them that will improve them. That's really our goal. We don't expect to come up with a whole brand new general circulation model for ocean and atmospheric weather. That's already been developed, but we can develop a small input that will allow them to increase their accuracy. That's what we think we can do, and so that's our ultimate goal. We think we can increase the ability to show more precisely where hurricanes may impact the coastal area from a few days further out. Some significant changes, but not necessarily, just small incremental change to those type of forecasting.
Okay.
And so we think we can improve those types of things incrementally, and in some cases where they're not even predicting earthquakes at all, we might be able to break open a brand new area of forecasting. Yeah, right now, according to USGS, earthquakes aren't predictable. So, we take one little step further, we might just start forecasting one. We have several people that have actually used different types of techniques based on weather patterns to predict some earthquakes. So it's possible. A little bit about stellar transformer is basically it's a space weather theory that explains interaction between solar and the other planets based on an EM induction effect. Mostly of the long wavelength EM, which seems to get turned into a type of gravity wave soup when it actually hits the Earth. So, and then at that point, if you're talking about gravity terms, you're not going to be able to calculate EM induction effects from gravity. So this is one of the hurdles that we're trying to overcome with this new scientific concept theory, or whatever you want to call it. And so the idea is to increase the ability to forecast all types of natural disasters, weather, climate change, earthquakes, certain types of wildfire that are related to coronal mass ejections, we believe. And so the ability to create a new model that shows the induction effect, the heating, the internal change in the atmosphere, the ionospheric relationships, to model all that and come up with a new forecasting scheme based on that is our ultimate goal. But we're going to start with monitoring earthquakes in the New Madrid and create geophysical stations and stream data into the VR, and that's where we're going to do our processing in virtual reality. Yeah, the seismologists, by the time they've actually seen the earthquake, it's too late. They can't, their forecasting time is seconds.
Right.
You may have time to jump under a desk if you're lucky. This, we're seeing 30 to 11 minute type precursors.
Yeah.
EM precursors, and they're in the Schumann resonance. We're seeing those type precursors. So there's a little lead time, and then if you can understand how it's related to solar activity, it may give you quite a bit of lead time and other planetary interactions. It should help improve the safety factor, and we think it'll help in several areas. General circulation modeling in general, which will improve forecasting.
Right.
And then the earthquakes is a new area totally that really there isn't much any forecasting.
Okay.
And then the wildfire outbreaks that are tied to CMEs, there's no theoretical basis for that relationship. So we're coming up with a theoretical basis that shows here's how it could work, and it needs to be looked into basically. We're looking at EM precursors in the Earth with a point and detect antenna, one you can actually aim down towards the fault zone. We also have a gizmo that's attached to the grid that turns the grid into a long wavelength antenna, an ELF antenna, and we're looking at those relationships to the Schumann resonance. The power grid has a reaction. And then we look up at the ionosphere with an astronomical antenna. And there's some other gizmos that we might incorporate. Some of these Tesla coils are detecting telluric currents, according to this new research. And so we're thinking we might use those to detect the ebb and flow on our property so we can determine the direction of the flow. There's a tidal flow, there's some north-south and east-west elements, and so we think these new Tesla coils may give us an insight into that and show us how to better arrange our antenna configurations.
Well, we actually connected through the Thunderbolts project, and a lot of the ability to understand the things that he's doing is facilitated by the work I do, which is interactive lab experiments in VR. So we've modeled the UV auroral activity on Mars through a connection that Bruce has with Digital Twin, and this opened up a whole world of analyzing the harmonic behavior of these celestial bodies. So it seems like it's we're in two different worlds, but it's surprisingly there's a harmonization between the things that we're doing, which has been quite an exciting adventure.
When I worked for the Navy at the U.S. Naval Oceanographic Office at Stennis Space Center, I was looking at new seafloor data, bathymetry data, and a friend of mine was doing seafloor work. He wrote a bunch of papers, Chris Smoot, and he told me about this new tectonic theory called surge theory, and it talked about these vortices on the seafloor. At the same time, I was looking at this fellow that was talking about the relationship between earthquakes and El Nino, and I thought that was intriguing. It was something that they didn't teach us about in college, so I was like, oh, never heard of that. And I thought this new theory may explain that. And that was kind of the impetus for me starting to look into this. And it was one of those things, once I started looking, I couldn't stop looking. I just had to keep looking because they kept seeing relationships that needed to be explained. Yeah, I saw something why isn't this explained already kind of idea, you know? It's like, there's no good explanation, and the deeper I looked into it, the more confusing the explanation they gave for the gravity wave soup that explains climate science. I just didn't follow it that well, and I was like, okay, with surge tectonics, it gave me a boost of understanding because I could look at these tectonic vortices where the pressure cells overlie, and it's like there was teleconnections between them. When pressure changes in one, it changes in the other. So I thought, using the gravity idea, that there was a density change in these vortex caused by the earthquakes, right. Increase in earthquakes, increased heating from below, increased change in the density, a change in the gravity field was driving this this pressure change across basin. And I did the research, and it was a good idea, but nobody really bought into it, and because it doesn't really explain the relationship to the sun, because I was also looking at, okay, there's solar activity tied to this. So I had to take it the next level, and the only way I could do that was through an EM process, because the plasma waves that hit the Earth are electromagnetic, at least because they're charged particle plasma. And so once I started looking at that, a few things rolled out of that, and surprisingly, I was like, wow. And I just decided to keep down that road, and then I met Dave, and he helped me with this Mars aurora. We saw the same pattern on Mars that we see on Earth in the lightning strikes, this 90-degree separation. Yeah. So the auroral pulses were organized that way, and we're like, we were looking at the golden ratio relationships with the octahedron tied to antenna, four corners on the planet, and they lined up nicely, with the octahedron. And so the lightning strikes do too. And then the ridges line up with the cube. So we're like, okay, there might be some relation to this geometry. And the more we looked in it, the more we see these relationships.
So you saw a
increased proton events correlates with these things. So you get an increase in proton in the plasma wind, and all of a sudden you get increased in these type of events. You get increased lightning, increased earthquakes, increased aurora.
The periods are showing this quartal relationship at 90 degrees. So this is really intriguing. And what we're seeing on the sun, we're seeing these cymatic patterns. We've got a composite of the SDO data from 2011 over, I think it's like a 5 or 6 month period. And the vorticity of the sun from the North Pole is just obvious in there. You see counter rotations just like a Birkeland current, and so we're seeing all these questions come together in a very kind of beautiful tapestry. So I'm familiar with HAARP, but not in detail, and you know, I know some of the people who have looked into it, and but we're more interested in the natural process.
Right.
And the intrigue with all the manipulation by nefarious entities is kind of off our worksheet right now. So,
Understood.
Yeah, I mean, burning holes in the iosphere can make a temporary change, but unless they can control what the sun's doing, it's not really going to be able to control the weather that well, in my opinion. But I'm sure they can do short-term modifications for tactical
Okay.
benefit, probably.
I won't go there. So, yeah.
it's really
That's just interesting.
it's super intriguing, and HAARP is a very interesting study. But I have to get the rest.
You know, the questions that people ask is, you know, why should I care about geophysics that I don't understand? You know, I get that from family and friends. But, you know, I tell them that it affects their life in ways that they don't realize. And, you know, I have to explain a little bit about what I think is going on with the relationship to the weather and all the other natural disasters. And then they start to think, oh, yeah, okay, that could be important. Yeah, so that's kind of the questions I get from, you know, friends and family. Now, in scientific discussions, it's, you know, you get all kinds of different questions.
I mean, the question that, or the thing that I think we should probably get across to people who are watching is just this much more electromagnetic based model versus the standard model of how meteorology and geophysics is looked at in the mainstream.
I would agree with that.
What is geophysics?
Geophysics is the study of the Earth, but with mostly remote sensing techniques, because when you look in the Earth, you have to use some type of instrument to measure whatever's going on down there. So seismicity, the EM techniques actually are the newest ones we're looking into, we think will come up with some really interesting data sets that show the precursor activity that can be used to forecast some of this.
Where can we find your work?
You can look for our publications on ncgtjournal.com, which stands for New Concepts in Global Tectonics Journal. Our peer review process is, if you write a nice paper, it doesn't have to, you know, be accurate in every aspect, but as long as it's interesting and it's well written, we'll publish it, because we don't weed people out through the peer review. So that's one aspect of what we do. It's been going on since 1998. It started as a newsletter, and the original founder has passed away and kind of passed that effort to us. Our chief editor is in Australia, and we have an editor in Italy, so we're an international journal.
Okay.
And we also have Geoplasma Research Institute.org is our nonprofit that has a little bit about our model, but it doesn't go into detail. If you join, you can read some the research papers that are published there. And then we have also on the New Concepts in Global Tectonics Journal page, if you go to the additional resources page, you can find where a bunch of the publications are with a group we published with in Florida. It's a different conference though, but the link is on that page under additional resources called Plasma Tectonics and Electric Geology. And on that same page is Giovanni Gregori's Earth-Sun Galaxy book, which is the fundamental physics explanation behind the stellar transformer. It's the backbone of the physics. And it's his endogenous Earth energy theory. It was a precursor to the stellar transformer. You could think of it like that.
Just in coordination with Bruce, we're building it's a telepresence app that will include a conference center and experimental labs that people can go in collaboratively from anywhere in the world. and you can keep an eye on that on the URL. It's the.vu. So that's the URL. It's a short one, but keep an eye on that one.